how should we relate to authority? That's the big question we want to ask today as we study God's Word and grow in Christ-likeness together. But before we get there, I want you to reflect on this question. When have you acted unkindly to someone that you disagreed with? Now, having a disagreement with someone is okay. It's fine. You might have a different view than someone else. But if you really think about it, when have you acted unkindly to that person? Maybe you had a bad attitude towards them, or you're just plain mean to them. But think about that for a minute as we get ready to study God's Word together. The question we want to ask is, how do we relate to authority? And the book that we want to explore is Romans chapter 13, specifically in verses 1 through 10. But let me just read the first verse for you. It says this: "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God." Now, before we get anywhere else, Paul is describing how the authority is set up. God has authority in place for a reason. It doesn't matter if you agree with who is in office. It doesn't matter if you agree with who your governor is, who the mayor is, who coaches your football team. It doesn't matter who the authority is. God has placed them there on purpose for a purpose. Now, as we continue to read, he says, "Consequently, however, if you rebel against the authority, you are also rebelling against God who put this institution into place." Kind of makes you second guess and think about how poorly maybe you've had some interactions with those people in authority. It doesn't matter if you're in the US or some other country. The authority is over us for a specific reason and purpose, and we can't forget about that. So we want to just reflect Christ in everything that we say and do, and how we react and how we interact with those who are in authority over us. Now, we know that as part of God's good creation, He gave Adam and Eve the responsibility to oversee all living things all over the world, right? The plants, the trees, the animals that are on the ground, all these things God gave power and authority to Adam to take care of. And despite the fact that we have some broken systems within our government and the rulers can often be corrupt, God has called us to submit to this authority and work within these government structures so that we can glorify God in the midst of this. It doesn't matter if you agree with them or not. What matters is that we submit to our authority by submitting to God. And I think God is glorified when we do this. I remember playing sports in high school, and I went to school with some really talented athletes. And it really kind of bothered me when they wouldn't go out to play basketball or football. And one of the main reasons was because they didn't like the coach. I thought that was a pretty terrible reason not to play a sport that you like. It should have nothing to do with the coach, whether you agree or not. If you're an athlete and you want to play a sport because you're good at it, a coaching staff should never be the reason why you don't play. You don't play for a coach, you don't play for them. You play for yourself, you play for your family, you play for God, and you play for your school. It doesn't matter what coach you have. I think it's a pretty terrible mistake, if you ask me. Now let's think about this question for a minute. How do you think love disarms some of the conflict we have or disagreements that we might get into? What are some steps that you might need to take in order to just cool off in the midst of an argument? Just remember, it doesn't matter who is in authority over you, but you respect them also by respecting God in the process, because we want to reflect Christ in everything that we do and say, as it represents Jesus in all things. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you soon.